By Chris Carraba, Dashboard Confessional, all the truth that I can tell. Is that statement in itself the truth?
Yes, mostly. Well, if you take it literally, it's not. It's all the truth that I can tell.
Got it. So, but this is an album. This is an album that almost didn't come to fruition. Talk about that process that's leading us up to here today.
Well, a number of things got in the way of the record. There was COVID, of course, broke out, and then I was in a pretty horrible motorcycle accident, and had to take the time to rebuild my body, and was pleased to say was a success. A long road, but a successful road. But yeah, these things it was a weird thing to do, guys, to like have to reinterpret a record you've just made through a new lens. And find it still connected with who you are.
How much had you completed before COVID, before your accident?
So the songwriting was largely done, and in fact, the recording was largely done. We were sort of as I recall, we were in the mixing stage. We were probably before the mixing stage was where I was in the accident. So then I had to listen to the mixing stage is where you listen to your songs probably the most on a record. You're listening to over and over to go over the details that you want to change. And so I found the record strange in that period. I found it strangely prescient. I found it seemed to know what I would be needing what I'd need to go through what I was going through. It seemed to be talking about it. And, even now, as I sit here talking with you, some of the lyrics, I just can't believe I didn't write after the accident.
So when you described looking at it through a different lens, I'm sure this was a point in your career that you've never really started an album, stopped, and then started it again. So was it different? Was there a different approach coming at it for the second time?
I never had, Doug. I'd never done that before. I'd taken breaks for various reasons. Perhaps you take a couple of days for a show, or even a couple of weeks or something like that. But you're sort of singularly focused when you make a record. That is your pursuit. So to have it halted and separated by such a moment of calamity was a unique experience that I intend to keep a unique experience. It should only be that one time.
Right. Hopefully. Yeah. From my perception, you listen to music and, some people hear the instrumentation, some people hear vocals. With Dashboard Confessional, I've always felt that your vocals stood out. You sing at a certain pace, your cadence, your intonation, where that's what I'm focused on. And with this album, I feel like that's more than ever.
This album, it's a little even more. There's probably even more of evidence of that because of the intentional underuse of instrumentation, which is related, I think, to my earliest records and on purpose. And then that's a tricky thing to do because probably there's very few people who like their own voice. I'm not one of them. And so, and I know that my singing style is born out of the fact that I have a limited range and a limited skill set of tones and things like that. But I lean into the things that I know I can do well, and have and will brave that being on display for my belief in maybe the lyrical content.
Yeah. Wow. So your albums over your whole discography, I've been noticing there's a real sort of eloquence about your words, and it's this album as well, like the other albums, have really, really well articulated, very self-aware. But this album is like the other albums are like diaries, but this is like really looking straight at yourself. And I guess that time that you've had, like sort of to soak it all in, lockdown, injury, and all of that. Even though that's sort of negative, that could be like a plus for a singer-songwriter type of guy to really sort of look at himself at that sort of objective place. And even like with the production itself, like the really early albums are really acoustic, but then they sort of go into sort of more sort of band thickness. But then this is kind of like, I guess you've got a lot of people, must have had a lot of people ask you, it sounds great when you hear the album, but we really connect when we really hear you play these songs live and acoustic. And then that's what this album really is. It sounds like there's a band there, and it is a band, but it is like really sort of focused on that sort of live acoustic element.
Which is where I have the most experience, Ben. You know, I have far more experience on stage in front of people trying to figure out how to make a song connect deeply than I do in the studio. And I'm pretty well experienced in the studio, but it's just a whole, like, some people are studio animals and some people are meant for the live thing. Well, I guess not people, but songwriters, you know, so my songwriting is really meant for this shared experience. And some of the, I think I've over a number of a couple of decades now, I've kind of honed this craft in understanding that, like, there's things I can do with my right hand to, say, imply a kick in its snare, or the presence of a band. Sometimes I use these open tunings, so you have the overtone of a bass guitar sort of in there without actually having the bass guitar, and that's in hopes that that at times you can use the least possible number of, you can have the least layers of division between you and the audience in sharing the song. And you just can't really get any closer than just like this one guitar physically between you and the audience. And so the idea or hope has always been to, like, imbue that guitar with enough that it can carry the moment that I'm having with this audience.
That 2002 Unplugged album always resonated with fans. Was that, is there sort of an awareness there when you're making this album?
I have to think there was. I don't know how, like, front of mind. I don't know how front of mind it was, but I do know this. I personally had, I'm sorry, going through the catalog now just to remember what the order of records were, but my first two records, the Swiss Army Romance and The Places You Have Come to Fear the Most, were presented in this austere way that this record is. And I'd spent a lot of years hoping that inspiration would draw me into that place, or intention would draw me into that place. And inspiration, I wasn't finding it would draw me there. The intention to push in there only pushed me further away. So I just kind of laid in wait. I laid in wait of the moment to come back. And there was an awareness that the fans wanted that, certainly from, like, the Unplugged days. It was a big moment they wanted to happen again. And I'd hoped to service that moment sooner, but I'm just, I was waiting for the, I think I was aware through trial and error that I could not conjure it. And so when it came, I could recognize it, though. When the actual inspiration came and I understood that this was in that lane of the MTV Unplugged, or those first two records, that I could fully embrace it. And also know that, I think it was also like, probably inspirational in some way to know that, like, actually this will be welcomed. It may not be celebrated, but the opportunity to listen to it will be a welcomed one for my fan base. And that felt good.
Yeah. The first track, Burning Heart, to me is like the obvious sort of hit. It's got like hit potential written all over it. And I reckon that's going to do really well.
That was my favorite track as well.
Yeah, it just it really stood out. And I think, you know, you definitely chose the right single to go out there. Sort of melodic and catchy. Sort of reminds me of bands like out here in Australia, like Eskimo Joe, and guys out in England like Tim Hughes. And then you've got like songs like Here's to Moving On, you know, a song that can sort of collectively pull a lot of people in. A lot of people can really identify with the themes sung in that song. And I can see, like, already sort of see a lot of people when you go live sort of joining in on that song, that sort of that chorus type of song where people really incorporate, sing along with you on that song.
That's again going back to the Unplugged days, because that's exactly what was the feature that resonated with fans. It was like a big sing along.
Yeah, certainly it's become a tenet of the live show over the years, more than any band deserves. It's been pretty fantastic, and I've just, you mentioned those two songs, and I've just had one show really where I started playing Burning Heart pretty early on. actually, the day I finished it, I played it with all the lyrics. And I was in, I think, Manchester in the UK, with all the lyrics spread out on the stage, and I sang it there. It was a little bit more of like throwing your hat over the wall, as they say, so you have to go get it. I was like, I've got to actually.
But like, are you coming out like acoustic solo, like right before an encore and doing this?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, nice.
Matter of fact. So, it's not that I had never played it live, but I just played it live, and Here's to Moving On, Burning Heart and Here's to Moving On, with people singing along, knowing all the words for the first time the other day, and it was
noticeable.
It was not just noticeable. It was it immediately gave the song a different set of power. There's going to be a lot for me to learn about that song from this audience, from my audience.
I definitely think that Here's to Moving On has kind of set itself up for that sort of crowd participation, particularly. I can see a lot of people identifying with that and really sort of singing their hearts out to that track, lyric wise.
It's anthemic in nature. Yeah.
And then Better of Me. I noticed that song was really well sort of put together with the dynamics of the song. Like, the first part of the song really drives with the drums sort of almost double time, and then really pulls back in the chorus and then like slows down. It's just got a great effective sort of half beat dynamic in that song. Sleep In, to me was the most interesting song. I would still say like Burning Heart's my favorite, and Here's to Moving On is the one I can really identify with. But Sleep In was the most interesting song because I was listening to it and I was thinking, man, how are you like fitting so much lyrical content in one song? Like, this song is just opened itself up to fit so much content. Like, the words are flowing out. It's like almost, it's not like a diary, it's like a book, but you're just flowing into that song with Sleep In. And I can even hear Pachelbel's canon going on in the background with the string arrangement, because it's kind of similar with the chord progression. I thought that could actually really work. But yeah, great work. I don't know how you did that, like how you set up a song where you could just pour so much out lyrically into that song. I was going, how is he doing that?
Thanks. I'm glad to know that resonated with you, because it was by design. That you set these, or at least I do. I set these writing prompts up for myself. Just when you're in a more logical space, not really in the moment of writing, but I always think like, I wonder if I could imbue a song with so much detail it felt more like long form writing than short form writing, for example. I don't know that it is in number of words or anything, clearly not, but that it feels that way. So like that would be an example of a prompt I would give myself, and then like be aware of it and hope, but you can't really reach for it either. It's just when it's somehow you're sit with your guitar, as I do when I usually write a song. I just sit down with the guitar, I start to noodle a bit, I start to verbalize some things that sound like words that have a rhythmic phrasing, and I keyed into the possibility where they dovetailed. This idea for a prompt, and where this song seems to be going, maybe I could just keep pushing it towards the prompt a little bit more. And for me, that was a success story in writing for Sleep In.
When it comes to your writing, who do you turn to for inspiration? I mean, who out there have you listened to and you said, this is somebody I want to emulate?
Well, if I say like the ones that are on the highest shelf that I probably will never reach, they would be, I think Paul Simon probably be the number one inspiration, knowing full well that there's several shelves that I won't reach before I don't reach his.
But it's unique that you chose Paul Simon, because Paul Simon, an absolute genius, but there's a brilliant hokiness to his style of writing.
Of the time, I think, though.
Okay.
Plop him in a more ironic era, or a more
like a Bridge Over Troubled Water era, and it's a little more sincere.
Well, yeah. Now that you say that, I can hear that. But before you said that, I couldn't hear that. I could hear other bands like the Killers and things like that. But now you say that, I can sort of kind of see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm most inspired by his body work, and also his craft work as a lyricist is just it's different than a poet, but he is a deep poet. But where I love to fall closer to him is where I think I have the potential to fall closer to him, would be in the lyricist realm. And you know what? I'm maybe a bit of a caustic person in nature, and I imagine he is too. But I also like what I share with him as an earnestness. I think I'm not really afraid to use that either. So whereas like in his day and time, maybe some of those things would come off hokey now. I don't think they did then, though. I don't think that if there was ever a hokiness in his songs, which I don't hear very much, because I listen differently. I think I can't help it. I can't help but assess it from also as a pupil almost. I can't hear that part as much.
I want to make it clear. I didn't mean to insult Paul Simon by saying it like the hokiness, because I love Paul Simon as well.
I didn't even hear it as an insult, though. I just heard it as an assessment that I think is probably fair. And but I think is also, but I can't help but be curious, like what would you pick up a young Paul Simon and drop him right now? I know what he's doing right now as a writer, but what if you picked up his young career, his middle career? We can't ever know, but I imagine
I'd say maybe what Doug means is he's kind of witty.
You're back now. You're back now, and it's 1997. What are you going to do? Probably be a little bit different than what he did in 1970.
So, like, I can also hear, I don't know if Bob Dylan's an influence, but particularly on the track "Me and Mine," you've got that sort of great line where it says, "I was like that once," and it kind of keeps rolling on itself. It keeps coming back to that phrase. There's an Australian songwriter, Paul Kelly, that does a lot of that in his songs. He's a very successful songwriter out here. I think he got it from Dylan as well, where, he'll repeat a phrase and really sort of nail home with a hammer, like, sing a bunch of words and then just bring that line in over the top,
Paul's genius, and he employs that so well. I know that I am a student of Dylan's as just a human being who couldn't be, and if you're of any generation since his. I would say I also that Leonard Cohen is probably there's a heavy dose of that too in the motif you described, having a line, because I think what Dylan shares and what Leonard Cohen share, and also I think Paul Simon's in this batch too, is a adventurism in their lyricism. They will go way far off the expectation, but maybe they'll use this line to bring you back, this repeated line, as you described, to bring you back. It sort of gives you license to take the listener way farther than they'd expect if you bring them back periodically to some rewarding expectation to revisit.
Chris, did the Beatles ever enter your life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. As a band, and then as individual solo artists, I think all of them have been important in my writing. Real specifically, I think George Harrison as a solo artist has influenced my writing. But then I also come from this world of like growing up a punk rock kid, a hardcore kid and a punk rock kid. And I would say that there's like people that influenced me, like the Descendants, who were so deeply influenced by the Beatles. And then I'm not cognizant of the fact that it's the Beatles inspiring me through the band I'm in love with at the moment that's inspiring me still. The Cure for me has probably been, if I had to say outside of Paul Simon, I think Robert Smith is the single biggest, and to me most obvious influence. It's like, it's surprised to me that I haven't just been painted as this, like, oh, he's a Robert Smith devotee. I feel like everything I do is just a pastiche. When I hear it back, I go, oh, that's me doing Robert Smith.
I heard it more so vocally on this album than on your other albums. I could really hear the Cure's sort of vocals on this.
That can only mean I've gotten a little better.
And with your lyrics, as I said before, there's a sort of eloquent articulation in them. Yet at the same time, they're very sort of easy on the ear. Like they go in very easily, but they're complicated, but they just go down straight into your soul. And I was going to ask you, like, have you ever had to sort of consciously re-edit the intellectual side of your lyrics when writing, and so kind of like sort of dumb them down for keeping listeners in mind, like objectively? So in order that the overall message of the song isn't lost?
I doubt it. I doubt that I've had to do it in a way that I mean, I think a writer should let their audience get out in front of them, should get out in front of their audience. It should, you should trust that your audience probably is, contains people much, much smarter than you. I think though that I have edited for what the song seems to need. We talked about Burning Heart. There was a song on there there's a lyric in there as a line that feels more congested. No, it doesn't feel congested. It feels less, it feels as powerful, but less interesting to me than the one I'd written. And I can't even remember what the one I'd written is right now, but it has to work. It has to function as a song first and foremost, before it can be judged for any other merit. I think if that's my medium. So that's got to be the victory. That's got to get the nod when it comes to who's going to win. I'm also probably only as smart as I seem in the song. So I would love to say I'm so smart that I've dumbed this down for you, but that is not the case. Though I wish it to be so.
Yeah. What about metaphors and metaphors sort of mixing with reality? There's always that sort of tension where you've got your finger on the initial inspiration of the song, the initial meaning of the song, that seed that you first have. And then as you sort of develop the song, it sort of slips away and sort of transforms sometimes into something else entirely. Have you ever had sort of much of a challenge to try and keep that original idea throughout the evolution of the songwriting process?
Not in such a way that I find it inartful anymore. I find it to be that the song, it's not just kind of like a oral history of your life necessarily, that it's necessary that you would present at a TED talk or some kind of something of that framing. I feel like the song has license to change the details a little bit, but I've never had much success just starting with the details and then trying to write my own history into it.
Well, like a snapshot, you mean?
Yeah, I know some people will kind of can envision a song. Wouldn't it be great to write a song about going to the Sydney Opera House for the first time, to start from a conversation we were talking about Australia when we were talking pre-interview. But they've never lived it or whatever. But that's an artful pursuit. I'm not as good at it. I seem to have to be able to try to tell you the story of something I've felt and experienced. I may have to change the details of the story. I think in Sleep In, I talk about the things I'm watching her pick up along the room as we're getting dressed and up from bed and getting dressed again. There's no way they're the specific things I thought of or that I experienced. That kind of thing is meant to be chosen like it was a palette of colors for a painter, I think.
Chris, before we let you go, I want to talk about the When We Were Young festival. I hate to ever categorize anything as emotional rock, but that's basically what this billing is. And
it's the most emo thing of all time.
It really is.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, did you expect the popularity to be added to 3 nights, all sold out right away?
Yes.
You did.
I did.
I
kind of understood that. I was privy to the bill, for example, well before it went out there. And there was this realization okay, to the degree that it broke the internet or whatever, as they say in the vernacular of our time. I did not expect that, but the success of galvanizing an original fan base and a new existing fan base, I really thought that this was set up for perfection for that kind of thing. The larger thing of the cultural moment that it generated. I didn't expect that.
For people who don't know what we're talking, I mean, we're talking about this festival that's taking place in Las Vegas. I mean, with every emo band you could possibly imagine, from My Chemical Romance, Paramore, Bring Me the Horizon, AFI, The Used, and of course Dashboard Confessional. And not to mention another 30 that you've all heard of. Do you feel that like there is a resurgence of that emotional rock genre?
Well, yes. Let me be specific to how you asked that question. Do I feel like there's one? I don't know, because I can't react from that feeling of like, oh wow. All right, how do I explain? My audience.
Are you gauging that there could be something going on here, some sort of movement here?
So, yeah, I think there. I really am, and I want to be careful on how I answer this, because I need to just give credit to my audience for like sticking with my band through, like, from when nobody knew about us to when we were like literally famous, and so was everybody in our scene because of the work and efforts of the fan base, to when the larger audiences the more eyes that were brought in from that moment to my next period. Like my audiences were materially the same, size, for example, throughout that stage, with the very exception of like, when we got to be like in a huge arena bands for a couple of years there with when everything dovetailed. What I think is really exciting to see is the rising tide floating all boats. I feel like a lot of bands, some of the ones that I thought were the best ones, sort of got lost. I think the attention had moved away from them in a way that it didn't really move away from me, and I felt it wasn't fair to them. I thought they deserved better. Now they seem to have a chance to show this brilliant work that should have been being paid attention to people who may be only hearing it for the first time. I'm really excited about that.
Chris, well said, and I want to thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and this was a pretty in-depth conversation about your music, and it was great to hear. Thank you so much.
Ben, thank you guys for having me. This was really lovely to chat with you guys.
Don't forget, the new Dashboard Confessional album, All the Truth That I Can Tell, is available everywhere, February 25th. Chris, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Ellis, that was a lovely conversation. Thank you for your time.